couldn't understand why you remained untouched. They poured salt into your wounds, whispered poison into ears you once trusted, orchestrated storms, and watched with glee as they thought you'd drown in them, yet you didn't. You stood, not with arrogance, but with a kind of presence that felt ancient, primal, like something tethered to an older law. When their sabotage failed, they stopped looking at you like a person. They started looking at you like a problem. And when their earthly tactics failed to shake your foundation, they reached for something deeper, something older. 12 shamans, 12 silent rooms. Your photo passed between fingers calloused from centuries of spirit work. Not a word spoken, until all 12 agreed, this soul is protected. You weren't protected by luck. You were armored in purpose. You didn't survive out of coincidence. You were chosen by something that does not flinch. These weren't just defenses. These were declarations. And what the shamans saw, what your enemies now fear, is that the universe doesn't just watch you. It echoes through you. You weren't built for average timelines. You weren't forged in soft fire. You carry lineage in your spine, mystery in your silence, and when you walk into rooms, something wakes. The air shifts, because you're not just walking forward, you're walking through. Through betrayals, through curses, through envy masquerading as advice, and the fact that you never begged for clarity only made you more divine. You didn't scream when they violated you. You studied. And the universe watched. Understand this, people aren't always afraid of your strength. Sometimes they're terrified of your resilience, because strength can be measured. Resilience cannot. It implies there is a force behind you, unseen but undeniable. And when they saw their schemes backfire, again and again, they stopped seeing you as the problem. They saw something else behind your eyes. Something that didn't ask for mercy. Something that didn't need revenge. Something that could take 1,000 betrayals and still walk away without bitterness. That's why they went to the shamans. Not because they believed in spirits, but because they feared what you already knew: you are untouchable by ordinary hands. The spiritual realm has no room for envy. It only honors truth, and the truth they feared is that you never asked to be protected. You were from the beginning. Your soul entered this world with assignments, contracts, and the suffering you endured was not evidence of weakness. It was training. Every person who tried to break you was just sharpening the weapon that now walks on 2 legs. You. And when those shamans looked at your photo, they didn't see just your face. They saw what followed you. The ancestors, the watchers, the karmic patterns that reverse harm like mirrors. You don't curse people. They just self-destruct in your presence. That's what makes you menacing. Not your words, not your posture, but the undeniable feeling that something protects you that they can't negotiate with. It's what makes people flinch when they lie to you. It's what makes them spiral after betraying you. Because there's something stitched into your essence that forces people to confront themselves. You're not loud, but you're revealing. You walk into spaces and masks begin to fall. Truths begin to fester. And they blame you, not because you harm them, but because you remind them of the harm they've become. That's why they sought out mystics, to ask if there was a way around your force field. The answer was unanimous: no. You see, most people are used to dealing with energies that collapse under pressure. But you inhale chaos like air. You take betrayal and alchemize it into prophecy. You transmute suffering into poise. And when they saw you growing, not despite the pain, but because of it, they began to lose control. It's one thing to hurt someone. It's another thing to watch them thrive anyway. That's spiritual warfare, and you win it not by retaliation, but by remaining. They don't understand why you were chosen, why their weapons didn't land, why their words turned back on their own tongues. But the shamans did. They saw your architecture, and it scared them too. This level of protection doesn't come to the ordinary. It wraps itself around those who serve something greater. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to shift frequencies, break cycles, cut bloodlines from their own ancestral poisons. That's why you were made indestructible. That's why they can't sleep after touching you wrong. That's why apologies come too late. They weren't just fighting you. They were fighting the protection that guards your path. Not with violence, but with consequence. You don't get revenge. You get confirmation. The kind of confirmation that leaves people trembling after a dream, after a silence, after hearing your name in spaces they never wanted it spoken, and still you walk with grace. That's the most unnerving part. You don't weaponize your energy. You don't threaten. You don't perform righteousness. You allow them to do what they must. And the consequences speak louder than your warnings ever could. You are protected not because you demand it, but because you embody what can't be faked: alignment. You are not lucky. You are assigned, and the moment people touch what is assigned, they invite backlash from dimensions they don't even believe in. That's not fear. That's physics. That's cosmic law, and your enemies violated it. So now they scramble. They pretend they were never against you. They rewrite history in conversations you're not in. They smile too hard when they see you, hoping the universe might believe the lie. But the damage has already landed. Their shame is spiritual. Their unraveling karmic. You were never their opponent. You were their test. And they failed it. The shamans knew. You always knew. And now the rest of the world will learn. Your soul doesn't play by human rules. It rewrites them. And everyone who underestimated your stillness will learn you're not just moving. You're walking through betrayals that didn't break you, only clarified the room. Through curses that were supposed to mark your downfall, but ended up carving out your destiny. Through envy that dressed itself in the robe of advice, delivered with a smile too forced and eyes too hungry. Every step you take now presses into layers of intention. Intentions not yours, but theirs. You felt it, didn't you? The silence that followed certain words, the undertone behind encouragement that tasted more like control. They didn't want you to evolve. They wanted to keep you manageable, familiar, small, but you didn't play your role. You walked through. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quieted. Soft-spoken sabotage. They didn't scream, they suggested. They whispered cautions that weren't rooted in care, but in control. Maybe don't go that big. Maybe you're doing too much. Maybe just play it safe. But every maybe they handed you as a leash, and you caught them. Oh, not immediately. You gave them the benefit of the doubt. You kept showing up with open hands. You mistook their projections for protection. But eventually, even your kindness had limits. You saw the pattern. They weren't worried for you. They were worried about losing you. Because if you grew too much, you outgrow them. So they tried to prune you. But you walked through. The curses were subtle too. People think curses are rituals, blood, candles. No, the real curses are spoken. Words soaked in bitterness, energy laced with resentment, a laugh too hard when you fail, a cheer too quiet when you win. You saw it, felt it. When you got promoted, they didn't say congratulations. They changed the subject. When you healed, they reminded you of who you used to be. That's how curses work. They try to keep you tethered to a previous version of yourself, but you didn't entertain it. You didn't swallow the bait. You just walked through, head high, soul clean. Rage transformed into rhythm. Envy doesn't wear horns, it wears familiarity. It hugs you, compliments you, advises you not to elevate you, but to contain you. And that's what they did. They cloaked their envy in counsel, in concern. You should wait. You don't want to burn out. That's not sustainable. All of it framed in care, but you saw the glint in their eye. The panic. The fear that you might actually break through. And when you did, they panicked harder. Because now, they can't pretend it was all for your own good. The truth is naked now. And you're still walking through. Through the residue of their envy. Through the ashes of their doubts. You weren't designed to sit still. Your spirit was architected for movement through fire. Through attempts to reduce you to a footnote. Through every backhanded compliment that tried to anchor you. You were never meant to belong. You were meant to become. And that journey, it's uncomfortable. It's lonely. But it is pure. Because no one can take credit for what you built. They tried. They aligned with you just long enough to say they were part of your rise. But when it got too real, too raw, too powerful, they slipped away. They feared you'd remember who you were. They feared you'd stop needing them. And now that you have, they say you've changed. But all you did was walk through. Through their absence. Through the distance that replaced conversations. Through the hollow spaces where connection used to live. You mourned it. Quietly. Not because you missed them, but because you remembered what it felt like to believe in someone who didn't believe in you. That age, it didn't break you. It refined you. Now you discern faster. You don't take advice from voices that secretly compete with your spirit. You don't share dreams with minds too small to hold them. You don't bleed in front of people who are rooting for the knife. You've become strategic, focused, not because you're cold, but because you're done pretending you're not fireproof. You walk through their projections now, their assumptions, their attempts to label you. You think you're better. You've become arrogant. No, you've become aware. And awareness to the wrong person feels like arrogance. You don't play the fool anymore. You don't dim your volume to soothe their insecurities. That's why they flinch. That's why they resent you. Because you didn't argue. You didn't explode. You didn't justify. You just kept moving. Through the fog, through the slander, through the loneliness. And now you're farther than they ever expected. Still not stopping. Still not bitter. Just clarified. There's a violence to your grace now. It exposes what they tried to hide, their motives, their ego, their fragility. You don't attack. You just exist. And your existence in this evolved form is a constant reminder of everything they failed to kill in you. Your joy offends them. Your clarity unnerves them. Your peace is a blade, because they remember the chaos they threw at you. And the fact that you still speak softly, that you still look them in the eye without malice, that hurts more than vengeance ever could. You're walking through, but you're leaving echoes behind. They underestimated the soul that keeps rising. They thought hardship would harden you. They thought you'd conform or collapse. But instead, you expanded. You learned to see betrayal not as tragedy, but as data. You studied your scars like scriptures. You rewrote the language of your identity using the ink of rejection. And now, you walk through with shoulders that no longer carry shame, with a spine made of memory and mercy. And they are haunted by your calm, because it proves you no longer need their validation. You only needed clarity, and you got it. And the journey continues. Through the fake smiles, through the sideways glances, through the attempts to diminish what they can't define. You're walking through all of it, not unscathed, but undefeated. And every step forward is a quiet reminder to the world, this is what happens when you refuse to die where they left you. This is what becomes of a soul who turns betrayal into blueprint, curses into curriculum, envy into elevation. They wanted you to stop, to falter, to explain yourself. But you're past that now. You're walking through. And nothing behind you can keep up anymore. Now that you're ahead, they call you distant, unreachable, cold. But they forget you were once accessible, open, generous to a fault. It was their manipulation that locked the doors, their inconsistency that forced you build walls so high even their apologies can't reach. They call it isolation. You call it insulation. A necessary detachment. You're not avoiding people. You're avoiding parasites. The kinds who attach when you're blooming, but disappear when it's time to water your roots. You've learned to recognize presence that's seasonal and energy that's transactional. And while they whisper that you've changed, they never admit they were the reason. You didn't abandon them. You outlasted them. And that hurts their pride more than any confrontation ever could. There's poetry in your silence now, a heaviness that speaks before you do. They feel it when you walk in, the weight of everything you carried without complaining, the dignity you maintained while they mocked you. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't respond. You just evolved. And that's what haunts them, that they threw fire and you learned how to forge with it. They threw shadows and you became your own sun. They wanted a victim. They got a survivor who looks nothing like the narrative they were preparing. And when they speak of you now, there's hesitation, a stammer, because the version of you that exists today terrifies the part of them still trying to pretend they didn't play a role in your becoming.